Welcome to Around the Blockchain. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Awesome. Julian, welcome to Around the Blockchain. If you can just introduce yourself to the viewers for me.
Yes, of course. Thank you for inviting me today. So my name is Julian Sawyer. I'm the Chief Executive of Bitstamp, which is the oldest crypto exchange in the world.
Lovely. So obviously you've probably had an interesting introduction into the crypto space, like everyone that I sort of speak to. How did you actually get into the crypto space?
Yeah, well, my career was sort of has been in three parts. I did sort of 20 years as a management consultant, so I'm very good at PowerPoint. And then I decided to get my first proper job, where I was a co-founder and chief operating officer at Starling Bank, which is one of the UK challenger banks. And I was there for 4.5 years or so. And then I got a phone call from a headhunter who said, "Oh, have you thought about crypto?" And I went, well, not really, but we talked a little bit more about that. And I think what was interesting is that there's a lot of crypto companies that are looking for financial services people. They're looking for people who've been in fintech, and merging the two domains of crypto and financial services together is where I think it became really exciting. And I think it was really that pivotal moment of, this is when the market is changing. This is when adoption of blockchain technology and Bitcoin and other assets are coming together. So for me, it was a bit of a not really interested, then it was a little bit more curious, then it was like, this could actually be really good. And so that's why I've moved into the world of crypto.
Yeah, awesome. And so you have done quite a few roles, I guess, within your career. So you said you started at Starling Bank as an advisor, and then you're also sitting on the board of an Australian neobank called Volt as well. What other roles have you had, I guess, within the traditional sort of finance sector, and then in crypto as well?
Yeah, I think as a management consultant, you have an awful lot of clients, and you see a whole range of different challenges that clients are trying to solve for in payments, in banking, etc. Being a co-founder of Starling meant, right from the very beginning, it is, what is this product? How are we going to manage it? How do we have the right risks and control mechanisms in? How are we going to hire? What's the culture of the business? What's our recruitment policies, etc.? So heavily involved in a whole range of things across the organization, and that becomes super important. After leaving Starling, I had an opportunity to meet Steve Weston, who is the CEO of Volt Bank. I'm not on the board, to be correct. I'm actually just an advisor to the board members. And I think what was interesting about Volt is they wanted to look at how European fintechs and challenger banks operated, and the Australian market was probably 2-3 years behind the UK market in terms of that. And so really what Steve and I have been talking about over the last, 18 months or so is just, what did I see and learn in the UK? What have we seen in Europe, and how we can apply some of those things within the Australian market? And clearly the challenger market space in Australia has been hugely impacted by COVID, but also just a number of them have removed themselves out of the business, or changed their regulatory status, or merged, or been taken over, etc. And so I think it's really interesting that people like Volt are standing there as the flag bearer in terms of what does a challenger mean. And moving into things like the banking as a service proposition they've done also has been super important. So for me, it's just about sharing the knowledge about what I've done in Starling, what I've seen in the European fintech market, and then applying that within Australia. And so for me, going to be CEO of Bitstamp was a very natural and logical conclusion, in terms of having done a lot of executive type roles, seen a lot in the consulting career, and then saying, actually putting all of that together as CEO. And I consider Bitstamp as a financial services business doing crypto. There's a very simple words, but they're very important. It's the mindset around financial services, regulation, control, etc. But with the excitement around crypto, which means we have to move incredibly quickly. It's a very dynamic market, and it's some of that that joy and that buzz that we've all seen within the challenger and the fintech space over the last few years. So it's replicating a lot of those items.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you mentioned earlier that crypto, I guess, institutions, particularly exchanges and that sort of thing, are interested in people with a traditional finance background. Why do you think that is?
So I think if we take a step back and look at a macro picture here, the regulator and regulations all emerge when they start to becoming important within financial services, when you're looking after people's money, when you are ensuring that the stability of the ecosystem, the financial services ecosystem, is maintained and enhanced even. And so what you need to have is what I kind of call the grown-ups in the room, which is people who understand what financial services is all about. Okay, the pivotal point that we're seeing in the market probably in the last 12 months is consumers now starting to talk about crypto. And when I mean that, I don't mean people who've always been in crypto. I'm talking about the people, your friends that you go and have a drink with, your family members are starting to go, oh, what is this? This sounds really exciting. I want to get involved. As they get into that mass market, the institutions are starting to go, okay, how do I make money out of this? What's the services and the propositions that I need to give to their clients? And clearly they wouldn't do anything if the regulators aren't accepting of this as a financial services product, as a piece of technology, etc. So what I think we're seeing is the conversations that we are having, the conversations that our clients are coming to us and say, we want to talk to somebody who understands our language. I've said this before earlier with you, which is, risk, compliance, controls are so important. And if you can't talk about that, you can't talk about 3 lines of defense, if you can't talk about regulatory reporting and KYC and AML and demonstrate you've got best practice in that, then the institutions are going to go, we can't deal with you. And that becomes really, really important. And so what I think we're seeing now is the institutions are now looking at what exchanges they want to partner with. And I think what we're seeing is a flight to quality in terms of consumers and institutions starting going, actually, where am I going to trade? Where am I going to put my money? Where am I going to store my digital assets? And they will go to where the quality is. And I think that becomes, again, really, really important. And we talked about this when we look at a Volt Bank, or we look at Starling or whatever. What is important is, can you give that level of trust? Trust customers to invest and therefore whenever you're in this industry, in this market, people are looking at this going, where's that trust, and have I got the right controls in place? And a very simple example, we have regulatory status in Luxembourg. That is a very, very traditional financial services hub. There are easier jurisdictions in the world to go to if you wanted to. We wanted to go to the financial services hub of Luxembourg, Singapore, New York. Absolutely critical. And that gives us credibility, and that gives us trust when we engage with the institutions and also the regulators as well.
Do you think for crypto to move forward and progress, it does need to establish itself in having some more sort of regulation in place and more regulatory bodies sort of in place, helping govern and guide where the industry sort of goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Regulation is critical to us as an industry, and also providing assurance to our clients and our customers. What I think is important is that what we've got is a bit of a lag here between an industry that's moving incredibly quickly and regulators and regulations catching up with that. And, in traditional financial services, these things take, years and years or even decades to resolve and to land what are the right controls. And so everybody is working super hard. We're just not all running at the same pace, but without a doubt, everybody's in it. And that's one of the things that I think will, and I think it's will be very healthy for the industry, is to ensure that we get more consistency in the regulations and the controls in place. So let me give you a very, very simple example. In Europe, 27 states have implemented certain things. Each state has done things slightly different. And so we are then having to to put the right controls in place across each nation. The US, 50 states, again, kind of similar. So where we have got global standards on, from people like Basel or AML standards, etc., what we would love is to get more consistency across the major trading, because it just makes it easier. And it means that we can consistently communicate to customers what we need to do and how we need to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Bitstamp obviously was co-founded back in 2011. I believe it's the world's oldest exchange as well. I'm not actually too sure if that's correct there. Correct me if I'm not
yes,
correct.
That's correct.
Okay, cool.
That is correct, yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the history of Bitstamp? Obviously, it's probably got an interesting one, being that it is the world's oldest exchange. Coming up for its 10-year anniversary this year. Talk to us a little bit about the history of Bitstamp.
Yeah, well, it started in a traditional fintech or technology type style in terms of the garage of Nate, who was one of the founders, and really just started to develop in terms of, well, what does this thing look like? What does good look like in terms of systems and security and processes and everything? Has been a huge journey over the last 10 years, and a huge amount of learning. And I guess if you think of time in Bitcoin is in dog years, and if we're 10 years old, then we're pretty old. And there's a lot of learning. And I think in Europe, we perhaps haven't had as many technology companies as the US have, and various other countries and jurisdictions. I think we should be all very proud of Bitstamp alongside a whole range of others. And I think what we also got is an evolution. So one of the things that we evolved from is where we wanted to be regulated. We mentioned that earlier. So we went to Luxembourg for that. So we've got 5 people in Lux. We've got 250 in Slovenia in several offices. But we also have got our presence in New York and Singapore. And I think this is really important that we've got a global product here that is literally traded 24/7, unlike other financial services. The question is, how do you organize yourself? How do you structure yourself across the jurisdictions, as well as making sure that you serve your customers? So over the last 10 years, we've learned a huge amount of what good looks like. And I think as the oldest, but one of the highest rated exchanges, I think that is super important, that we've got all of those components come together.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you were appointed CEO in March of this year. How has that been? Obviously, that's quite a big milestone. I know it's not your first, gig as a CEO, but how has that been? What sort of challenges and stuff have you sort of had to overcome? Obviously, COVID's probably going to be one of those. And then, how's the transition been so far?
I think it's been brilliant. I think, and you can't underestimate the challenge that the team has had to, they've gone from a founder CEO who's done an amazing job and incredibly passionate and a visionary, to having a new CEO who's from outside of the company in the time of COVID. Okay, so next week is my first time that I'm going to be able to visit Slovenia. Therefore, I have not met my people. Everything has been done on Zoom. And so we've done a huge amount of change in the organization. One of the things we're looking at is ensuring that we are more fintech mindset in terms of agility, about customer propositions, about minimum viable product, about the UI and CX, etc., and really ensuring that our mindset is constantly developing in a very similar way to how fintechs have developed in the market. So for me, we're going through quite a lot of change. COVID certainly hasn't helped, but the team has been brilliant in embracing what we're doing and where we're going. There's a lot of passion at Bitstamp. But one of the things that was amazing my first week when I met the teams and meeting everybody and just hearing their stories. They've been here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years at Bitstamp, where if you go into a lot of fintechs, some of them went around 5 years ago, but secondly, there's a lot of turn. So for us, we've got a lot of passionate people who really love and what we think of that. I'm taking the business forward, and I think people are seeing the vision, seeing what we're doing, seeing how we're doing it, and really, really embracing it. So I'm really, really proud of the team.
Look, so what would you say makes Bitstamp one of the top exchanges in the world? And I guess after that as well, sort of leading on from that, Julian, what would be your, plans moving forward, at the helm as CEO, and then also collectively as a company?
So I think, you look at what makes a great exchange. And I do think it goes back to one of the themes we ran with earlier, which was around trust. So, what you want is an exchange that has incredibly high availability and uptime. So when the prices move, and we've seen that just a few weeks ago, we need to be up. We need to always be available so you get the right price to buy or sell your assets. And I think it is, a real challenge for customers to have that trust when they're sitting there going, I want to trade, and they can't. So that becomes super, super important. I don't think that's really understood, but the frustration of people when they trade on other exchanges is incredibly high. You clearly need liquidity, so you need enough volume coming in to get the right price point for what you're doing. For us, we also want to have transparency in fees and making sure which is very clear. And the example I often use is, someone like a Robinhood in the US is free in inverted commas. However, we know it's not. And so actually we want to have transparency. People are not afraid to pay if they understand what they're paying for. And I think that becomes, again, really, really important. And then finally, I think this is about quality of the assets that we list on our exchange rather than quantity. And I think there are some players who will list anything and everything where they perhaps don't have enough liquidity. It doesn't have enough security and resilience around it, and is a very unknown quantity. And then we're saying to customers, please invest in it, trade in it. And it's like, well, is that fair? Is that right? So I think, to use the word I used earlier, it's about being the grown-up in the world. It's not chasing every fad. It is ensuring that you've got the systems and the availability on a 24/7 basis that is up and is fit for purpose, safe from cybersecurity attacks, safe in terms of where we store your money and within the company, etc. The best banking rails. All of these things are super important. They're all different components within that. So for us, that's what's important. Okay. In terms of where we're going, I think the market is incredibly buoyant. I often talk about this as the fastest part of financial services, and they're very exciting. Just to keep up with the news is just phenomenal, which is great that we've got podcasts like this that's helping to educate and inform. For me, it's about picking the right bets. We can't do everything. We're not going to do everything globally. We want to ensure that we can provide, spot exchange in the US, in Asia, in Europe, which has got a mix of consumer and institution with the right set of products and services that surround the spot exchange that gives you enhanced product servicing. So, as an example, staking and things like that, absolutely we do, but there's other products that we don't believe is what an exchange should be doing. And I'll give you an example. I don't think an exchange should really have a debit card or credit card offering. I don't think there's people who are doing incredibly well by offering credit cards, who are far better than we would ever be in terms of doing that, and to get some crypto assets as a reward scheme, don't think that really works. And particularly, if you look at the card market in Australia, you look at the card market in the European Union, the margins are not there. It is not a profitable business to be in. I don't understand why. And I think there is a temptation for some exchanges to leak into full-scale banking without understanding what full banking means. And I guess from my background, I kind of do understand that. So there's a whole range of different aspects, but it's about ensuring that we're providing the best capability, the best service with the additional products and services around that is inherent within within an exchange.
That's awesome. Great answer, Julian. Look, I really enjoy hearing people talk about service over sales. I think the way forward is, funnily enough, going to be very, very service based. And I think obviously what you guys are doing at Bitstamp is awesome as well. I think you're probably going to be quite successful there. Look, we've seen some pretty big news happen recently within crypto, although it's kind of a bit of a cliche to say that. I think every 2 or 3 weeks there's probably some new big news that happens. But what I'm referring to is El Salvador obviously recently passed a bill to recognize Bitcoin as legal tender. So I guess what's your entire sort of take on that situation? Do you think it's good or bad for the industry? And then what do you sort of think happens off the back of this as well?
Well, I think there's probably a couple of items here. One is, I think there's been a lot of discussion in the last couple of months around energy usage, and one of the things that El Salvador is doing is ensuring that miners can use green energy, etc. So those things have got to be good. Yeah, without a doubt, having that debate, etc., probably taking away a little bit of the emotions out of this, but let's get the conversation right. And I think some of the outcomes of this is probably correct. I think if we look at a Bitcoin as a currency, I think it is interesting. There's obviously a lot of economic challenges within El Salvador in terms of currencies, etc. We've got to also remember that the US dollar is used in a huge number of countries as the default or the second currency. So there's a whole lot of dynamics within that, and it's not like El Salvador is just saying, and there's Bitcoin as our primary currency. So I think there's some nuances there. For me, I think you've got to look at what is the right cryptocurrencies for various different use cases, and I think if you've got an asset by definition or just by historical, which is volatile, which is means it's very exciting and people can make a lot of money, and we've seen some really good examples of that. Is that the place that I want to go and buy some milk or have my salary in? I think there is a question there that needs to be reflected. What I think is important is if you look at the technology of blockchain, absolutely it has a role. That's number one. Secondly, are there stable coins or are there some other digital assets that are going to be really good for payments? Absolutely. So I see this as one step forward. It is not the end point. And the end point could be other digital assets as a currency. It is certainly the technology of blockchain used across there, and we see central bank digital currencies as well being part of that story. So I think this is one stepping stone. I think it is creating a lot of noise. I think that is super exciting. It's getting a lot of credibility. It would be wonderful if other countries also embraced this. So it's not an endpoint. I think some people have been calling it of utopia has happened. It's one step forward. And I think if you look at payments and retail payments, you've got some mechanisms already in place that work. Bank-to-bank transfers, debit cards, credit cards, Visas, MasterCard, etc. There's things that work in majority of countries. What is important is to understand where blockchain can solve different use cases that are not working. And a really good example is, remittance payments. So people who are trying to send money to their family and friends from one country to another country, that is a broken process in financial services. You look at SWIFT and GPI within the SWIFT portfolio. Again, why does it take so long to just get money from the UK to Perth? It is so long and so expensive. there's got to be a quicker way. There's a better way. And yes, there is. You can use cryptocurrencies for that. So I think this is a stepping stone. This is not an end point. And I think that's where we've got to understand and appreciate what does this mean.
Great answer. Look, I was actually going to ask off the back of one of the things you just brought up there. Do you see any other bigger sort of countries or more well-known countries actually follow suit and do something similar to El Salvador?
I'm sure in time others will look and doing that, and I think you've almost got to look at this as a spectrum here, and you've got central bank digital currencies at one end, and so you could say that as soon as one country has done that, and we know that China's looking at it, the European Union is looking at it, the UK is looking at it, there's a lot of countries looking at it, then yes, you have got that. The question then is, how do you apply that into the financial service ecosystem? So if it is just replacing central bank and major retail and institutional banking moving their money around, it's a replacement payment system, then it's not going to be as revolutionary. It's just using the technology as opposed to the application of that technology like a Bitcoin or Ethereum, etc. So yeah, without a doubt, there'll be other countries that will engage in this. That's at one end of the spectrum. El Salvador is probably at slightly the other end of that spectrum. And there will be people who will be going, how do we, using this technology and on these particular solutions, help us do certain things? And at the end of the day, we've got to solve people's problems. And are those problems about payments, about banking, about access to banking and inclusion? Is it about cross-border? Is it about what currency they are dominated in, etc.? So there's a whole range of different things. And I think probably this conversation and others where you've got people who are understanding of financial services starts to embed. It's like, okay, so where does this piece of technology or this solution or this product, where does this sit in the ecosystem? Is it going to replace something? Is it going to be an additional item? And that becomes really interesting. Again, I think it's a stepping stone of this, but without a doubt, other countries are going to use this technology, whether it'll be Bitcoin or whether it'll be a stable coin or whether it'll be their own stable coin, I think is part of the picture which we're going to see evolve over the next few months and years.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the whole crypto space, you've just mentioned a whole bunch of different use cases there, from payments to, banking the unbanked, DeFi. There's a whole bunch of stuff. The whole crypto space itself is very, very convoluted and can get quite confusing. Where do you sort of see things going, I guess, for the crypto space itself?
And I think for me, and I think we've touched on this quite a few times today, so people will probably understand where my head is. I think we at Bitstamp and we as an industry are part of financial services. So we need to embrace that, not fight against that. And I think what you'll find is that regulators and therefore global standards will embed this into financial services as opposed to kind of the wild west of crypto. And those areas where people are not putting the right controls in place with the right jurisdictions, the right controls over money and compliance and AML and KYC and KYT and everything else will get closed down, will not be viable, will not ensure that you've got customers' trust. So the sooner that we can educate consumers in particular about what good looks like in an exchange and what bad looks like, that is really important. And then I think people will exit. And let me give you a really good example of this. In the UK, you have to apply for the Fifth Money Laundering Directive application called VASP. The FCA has had over 200 applications, but last week they announced that 50 of those have withdrawn. So that's 50 companies who've said the regulatory framework that is now required is too great for us to continue to trade. We're going to exit the UK market. That's 50 bad actors who don't think compliance is good. And that's just one country. That is going to continue to happen where people go, if we need to play, the stakes are too high, they're too complicated, they're not where we want to do. And for someone who's come from a compliance first exchange, we're going, this is exactly what has to happen. So we will, through natural selection, see companies exit out the market. We'll see them going to jurisdictions where the barriers of entry are a lot lower. And that becomes really important. But that then creates the stability in the financial services system, which ensures that this will become adopted more and more by the institutional players who are trying to do asset management and pensions and banking as a service across the whole jurisdiction. So for me, this is about maturity. And what we've never found is a financial services product that has not been managed within the financial services industry. And that becomes really important. So we can think about how we fight them, but actually it's far better to change within them. And that's what we want to do at Bitstamp, is ensuring that we are part of financial services, helping to change the world for the better by using crypto assets.
Do you see there being a place for both centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's interesting about DeFi is, you know, by definition, they have not got some of the controls out from an AML and KYC. And I know I'm talking about that a lot, but that is really, really important. And we've seen when banks don't have the right AML and KYC controls, and they get huge fines where they get things wrong. So we shouldn't be flippant about this. What I think is going to happen is, if we think about what DeFi is, first of all, it's a piece of technology. Okay, that is really interesting. So as a technology, it will get used and adopted by others. But if we think of crypto here and main financial services here, and DeFi is way over on the left, what I think we're going to see is the DeFi is going to come much closer to the centralized exchanges, where we have got the on-ramping in terms of AML and KYC and payment rails, etc. And therefore the arbitrage between what you can earn on a DeFi rather than what you can earn in banking and what you can earn with a centralized exchange, the arbitrage will become less and less and less. So I think there will be more oversight required on DeFi. And that will inherently mean they will move closer to the likes of us. So are we the gateway? Are we the bridge from traditional financial services and fiat into a DeFi world? But the DeFi is very, very close to what we're doing. So is that more of a closed loop DeFi? So we know who all the actors are. How do we ensure that we can play a role in there? But I think you've kind of got a couple of things here. You've got almost like a head and a heart mentality. So the heart is saying, oh, we're going to break financial services with DeFi. Great. The head is saying, actually, it's a great piece of technology that can do some really amazing things to making customers' lives better financially. How do we do that within that ecosystem that exists, that has to exist? And that, I think, is where we are going to land. And that's where we see our role within Bitstamp.
Awesome. Look, Julian, we've been going for about 35 minutes now. I know you're quite busy. Have you got any closing thoughts for the viewers?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for inviting me here today. It's been great to share a few thoughts. I mean, I think the key in my mind is this market is moving out of the pure crypto world into the mass market. And that is super exciting. There's a huge amount of opportunities to be engaged either within the industry and working within the industry, or as a consumer in terms of just understanding what this can do. So this will change financial services for the better. And I think it's super exciting in the fastest part of financial services to be involved in. So thank you for your time today.
No, Julian, thank you so much. I appreciate you jumping on.
Thank you.